Welcome to Arm in Arm, a podcast for collection industry training, brought to you by accountsrecovery.net and sponsored by TMAX Dialer and Communications. This podcast aims to talk about a very important component of building a successful collection agency, training, and continuing education. Over the years, I've heard a lot of great ideas from different people about training collectors, and I think everyone can learn something from hearing how others manage this important task. My name is Mike Gibb, and I run accountsrecovery.net, a news and information site for the collections and debt buying industries. This podcast is being sponsored by TMAX Dialer and Communications, a leader in the dialer service industry. TMAX's hosted auto dialer is an all-in-one virtual call center that is capable of working with both small and large call centers alike. They have this very simple CRM built in their hosted auto dialer that can help you manage and organize your contacts easily. TMAX Dialer also understands the importance of maximizing your time, efficiency, and your efforts, and their technology can improve your productivity by as much as 400%. TMAX also offers a free 7-day trial of the service. Sign up for it now at www.tmaxdialer.com. Joining me for this podcast today is Kelly Parsons-O'Brien from Pacific Credit Services. Kelly is a third-generation debt collector and has worked for the family business since 1994 when she was a freshman in high school. Kelly also currently serves as the immediate past president for the California Association of Collectors. Kelly, thanks for participating in the podcast today. Looking forward to a great discussion. You ready?
I am. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Well, for this episode, you came up with what I think is a really cool idea, the importance of taking a holistic approach to training. So why don't you maybe expand on that a little bit and share what you mean by it and how it affects your training process?
So it was interesting when we started talking about this, and I think it was you that first used the word holistic. And so I know you see it a lot. And so I'm like, okay, what does this really mean? And what it really talked about is, kind of incorporating all of the, in the holistic health, including all of the person when you're dealing with them. And what I was interested is that we recently selected the Waldorf School for our daughter, and they believe in teaching the child's head, heart, and hands, so the whole child. And so it was interesting, and their goal is that they create lifelong learners. And so what I was looking at in kind of the holistic and then kind of our personal path, what I was thinking about was do we often look at the trainee or the new hire from like where they come from, where are they now, and then where we want them to go? And so for me, it was kind of about the whole person, because I think their past brings a lot to the training room. Mm-hmm. Also where they are currently. And then I think, and then where they want to go, what's their career path look like? Is it money? Is it higher up? Are they on the management plan, or are they looking just to make a lot of money being a really great collector? So I think that those were, and then my hope is through kind of looking at the whole collector and training them holistically is that we're going to create an environment where they want information. They're reaching out to you to be better. And that's been our goal with our new hires.
Very interesting. So how does that are you changing your training process? Are you sort of working this new approach in sort of bits? How does it sort of actually manifest itself in how you're training your employees?
So, what I looked at is so when I first started thinking about these things, and then you used the word holistic, and then I looked at my approach and I'm like, well, we're already doing that. So not too long ago, I really did a lot of studying about like adult learners, like how we learn as an adult. Mm-hmm. Because I think that sometimes we look at our education and we don't always take into consideration that I'm training like a mother of 4 that is trying to find housing, or right. I'm training, all of these people that have all these things going on. And so little things like making the training relevant to them. So like, why does it matter to them? Like how does this specifically apply to their job? So those are the things that we did. We also changed like how much classroom time we're doing. I think it was an ACA trainer that made the comment that adults can learn for like about 7 minutes before they need to do something. So we incorporated a lot more like fill in the blanks. So instead of me just giving them a document with a bunch of information, I've erased a bunch of information that they actually have to fill out. So we're interacting. And so those were the small little things that we did initially. And then to prepare for our podcast, I also went back to kind of my notes on adult learning and kind of talked a little bit, and we can talk maybe later. It's like all the little things that we've tried to incorporate in our training that help adult learners be more successful.
Well, I know one point you wanted to bring up was the importance of having what you call a beginner's mind. What does that mean? So one of the things that I think, and I'm doing this 25 years, so this is my 25th year of doing collections. So it always comes very naturally to me. And I think early on in my career as our office trainer, I just couldn't understand why somebody couldn't just understand it, right? And it was my husband that shared with me. He's like, they have a beginner's mind. So everything that you know, they don't know. They don't know any of it. And right. So really looking at training differently. So like I'm teaching somebody like how to walk, right? The other thing that we talk about is like I'm asking somebody to be a conversationalist. Sometimes I'm asking somebody to be a conversationalist that does most of their communication by text. And so I'm asking them to talk in an environment where we don't really make them talk anywhere else in their world, right? I also think that like the younger generation, we do property management debt. Many of them have never had an apartment. They don't even know what a rental contract looks like. They don't know what the responsibility is for the landlord, what the tenant's responsibility is. Same thing, they maybe have never bought a car. They've never, they don't have insurance. Maybe they're on their parents' insurances, so they don't understand how co-pays, deductibles. So in my mind, I think that really when we go through, and if you're looking at that individual as a whole person, right, knowing where they come from, so not only their age, but what's their experience level, it really helps you relate the training to who you're dealing with, and thinking about where they're coming from and where you're trying to get them to go. Being on my parents' insurance, or as I like to refer to it, the good old days.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I like, sort of teaching these people to walk, teaching these people who've never had experience. A lot of that has to be done in the classroom. So I imagine how you're approaching those classroom sessions is very important to determining how well those collectors retain that information.
Absolutely. So I think my philosophy here is the classroom happiness is motivating. So nobody wants to go into a classroom and know that this is where I'm going to live for the next, month or week or however long it is. And I go back to one of my small mini careers that I had at Wells Fargo. And I was in there for 6 weeks and I was excelling the training and I was so bored. I'd call in sick and I was not the perfect employee. And then I look back at it and I'm like, well, it wasn't really fun. It was very like sterile. We were at these tables. And so when we, as I develop our training program, little things like a prize box, right? Gift cards, quizzes, all day long. We do quizzes for candy or prizes. And the other thing that we started doing we don't normally provide like food for our staff unless we're having like some event. But I would start going and I get like candy bars and those cuties, little oranges, small apples and some healthy snacks and some candy in the middle of the table, because I think the worst thing to have happen is you're an hour from lunch, your belly is gargling. You're sure everybody in the room can hear it. And the last thing that you're doing is listening at the trainer tell you about how to be a great collector. So, those are those little things. And it was interesting. Somebody had talked to me about, it's like busy things, like little puzzles they can play with their hands and stress balls and things like that. And so in my environment, we don't do that. I know some agencies do. For us, I really want them taking notes. I want them to be interactive. I know that the material that I'm giving them isn't written in the way that they always learn. So being able to write notes for themselves, I think is really key in that process.
Is that where the flip charts comes into play?
So I found these, we were struggling with the staff remembering the small things. So like on an insurance billing, making sure that you're coding the account correctly, making sure that you're giving the disclosures, making sure you're setting the expectations for the consumers. And so what I was finding is we'd flip through this book, like their training manual, and they really needed like a quick guide. And we have a computer CMS program. They can search it, but how long does it take it to search it? So I took like the 8 steps of the collection call, and I also took like unique situations. So like a divorce, insurance, bankruptcy. There's like 3 more that they're on there. We have a dispute department in our office. So how to send an account to our dispute department. So what I did is you can go on Pinterest because they're super great, but the website is called Kinder Craze. So I think if you just searched Kinder, like kindergarten, and then Craze, flipbook template. What it is the teacher designed it on PowerPoint for parents. So like it's something that she gives out to parents so they know how homework works and all that stuff. But I just turned it in and I used the PowerPoint, and you can move it around, and the collectors love it. They have it at their desk. It's colorful, so they learn which color is which thing, and it's labeled. And we've had so much reduction in like compliance issues, like, missed code, the account not in the right collector code, all of these things where they were often missing. Disclosures have been improved because they're knowing which disclosure to give when, which circumstance.
Right.
So I'm a huge fan of it. It was really great for our office and really what the collectors needed, especially the ones that had been on the floor for just a little while, right? Like they knew kind of the basics, but they were still learning how to collect. And then along with learning how to collect, I'm still supposed to remember all this compliance stuff. And so it just really gave them a quick reference place and a little bit of, a crutch that they needed.
Got it. I know that, sort of teaching people to use the right words when you're on the phone is very important. And I know you're a big advocate of a system known as Words That Work. That was put out by Mary Shores, a collection agency owner. How have you incorporated that into your training?
So I guess I want to thank you and Jack for having her last year at the Collector Live, because it really resonated with me. And I think what resonated the most with me was that it was already something I was doing and what made me successful as a collector. It made my best collectors successful. But what I think that it also did was it created an environment for your best collectors to handle those calls that they weren't successful on. So everybody has calls that they aren't great on, right? We all have those calls. And so it will allow them to have different resources, different things that they could use. It's amazing how her program calms consumers down. And I really encourage you to use it in your personal life. And that's what I share with the new hires is like, practice on your husband, practice on your kids. It's amazing how the program works. So we've modified it also for settlements. So we weren't maximizing our dollars on the accounts where a consumer wanted to settle. They called in with the intention to settle. And so the collectors were able to, so I designed Flipchart again. Designed a program where they can use the words that work that kind of Mary set up, but I changed them for not only our philosophy, but specifically to settlement negotiation. And it seems to be helping. Our settlements, we're getting more money than we used to in some of our settlements. And sometimes it's just a few dollars, but that adds up pretty quickly.
Excellent. And I know we talked a little bit before about the differences between learning as a child when we're in school versus learning now as adults, and the different pressures and different ways that people learn. Any other pieces of advice about how to sort of set the stage so that adult learners are able to sort of remember, comprehend, and sort of process everything that's coming at them during training?
Yeah, so there's kind of like 7 areas of things. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there's like 7 areas of items that really you need to be aware of with adult learners. And like I said earlier, like the information's relevant, the expectations, they need to be able to use it immediately, things like that. So I think for me, the takeaways from the adult learners, one is giving them like a learning style test, like a self-assessment. There's a ton of them online. Find them. It really helps get to know that new hire and kind of know what they like. Of course, your goal is that your training manual does do all those things, right? It helps visual learners. It helps the people that need to do it. It helps the people that can listen really well. But what I find is if you know specifically that Susie is a hands-on person, then you're going to give her more opportunity to be hands-on. So I think that having that knowledge The other thing that we did that's really been helpful is I send out an email what to expect. So usually like the Friday before the new hire starts, I send out an email. I say things like, we're going to be in a classroom. Here's a phone number for your, childcare emergency contact. We're not going to be at a desk here if you need this. Here's an overhead. I send an overhead picture of like our parking lot. These are the spots that are good for you. Here's an estimated schedule of our week. We have a buddy system in our office, and they go to a buddy lunch on Fridays. So I indicate on Friday, our plan is to have a buddy lunch. It'll be about an hour and a half. If this won't work for you, please let me know. So I really set the stage as to what they should be expecting as they move forward.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I guess the only other thing that really is to know where they come from. So I know we talk a little bit about getting to know them, and we do. I don't know, in our office we do like the team building games, if you could be anywhere in the world, or all those kind of silly questions. But I think what that does, and at least for a trainer, or should do, is it should tell you a little bit more about who the person is. I recently had a new collector that was struggling on the phone, but I also knew that he did a lot with his church. And so it was interesting that we could relate what he was struggling with on the phone, which was being direct and asking for what he wanted, with his church experience. So I'm like, if you want somebody to come to church on, Sunday, and they work on Sunday, then you might offer like a Bible study on Friday, right? Or you'll give them this option because you want them to come to church. And I'm like, it's the same kind of idea that you're asking them to pay. And because I got to know him in that training and I knew that about him, it gave me an opportunity to kind of tap into something. And it seems to be successful, and it helped him relate that information. And I think adult learners really need to be able to relate the information you're giving to them to either a past business experience or something personal for them to make it stick.
Excellent. Great advice. Well, Kelly, I really appreciate you joining us today. Thanks for taking the time and sharing such useful, that's the word, I guess, and valuable information. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike, for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks again to everybody for listening to this episode of Arm in Arm, and thanks to T-Max Dialer and Communications for sponsoring this podcast. We'll be back soon with another informative episode. Until then, goodbye and good training.